60s to help control the lily pads in the lake, which were totally overrunning it.
Speak up, well.
It's been perpetuated and expanded so that now there's the Farrar Pond Conservation Trust, the Farrar Village Conservation Trust, and Lincoln Ridge Conservation Trust, and we are charged with maintaining the conservation land, maintaining the trails, and trying to get educational activities going like this one. The original president was Tony Pickman, who at 94 or so is still living at the other end of the lake. My father Gordon was the next president, and I was the next in line. This dam was originally built in 1800 by Ed Farrar.
1900.
1900, excuse me, wrong century. It's been washed out a couple times. This was the latest version that was built when, Harold?
I don't know. Good. When did it wash out? He's going to talk about that. That's
okay, but this current one you're standing on was done 15 years ago?
10 or so. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
89?
Yeah.
In order to allow us to do drawdowns, in order to maintain or keep the invasive plants at bay. So at this point I will... Oh, he just ran away.
No, I go next.
He's
then
going
him.
after
All right.
cookies.
We'll let Harold get going here.
All right. Thank you, Will.
Step right up there, sir.
The man needs no introduction. Harold.
And we have one new person who just joined us.
Marie Koitman,
And where do you live?
68 Birchwood Lane.
Okay, thanks, Marie. I know you, but not everybody.
Thank you.
Oh, and here's
And Belle Welch at 74 Birchwood.
All right. I will try to be short. Ha, ha, ha. Anyway,
First, Harold.
the story begins before 1066 in France. When
Harold. There's a storm coming. Can you move it up?
when Gualcaline de Ferraris of France becomes a big shot for William, who later in 1066 becomes William the Conqueror. So Gualcaline de Ferraris was his iron maker, horseshoer, armor maker, and all that, and got pretty high in the administration after the Normans took over. We fast forward now to 1540 or so, a few years after the Pilgrims had settled here. Speak up.
We can't hear you with the running water.
Yeah. You're competing with the water.
All right,
With the
come away
spillway.
from the water. Anyway, 1540, one of the Farrars, they now call themselves Farrar, not Farrar, which you would think they would have called it, French and all that. They called themselves Farrar, and one young man came and settled in Lancaster. And then one of his sons, somewhere down the line, the young kid George was apprenticed to a farmer in Lincoln and helped with the founding of the town, Goebel. Goebel had a king's grant for a couple of thousand acres or so and ran the farm, which we now call Codman Farm, Goebel. So anyway, young George was apprenticed to him, and Goebel liked him and gave him 1,200 acres or so down here, or 500, whatever it was, where he built the old homestead, which was on what we now call Concord Road, until it fell down in the 70s. And the family settled there, the Farrars, and became citizens of Lincoln for many, many years, many generations. They were all over the town clerk, sheriff. And the tradition in the family was one person has to run the farm, we'll send the other kids off to Andover, Harvard. So they became pretty widely known, and all throughout Lincoln, blacksmiths, ministers, town clerk, all over the place. The last guy to live in the old homestead was Ed Farrar. And in 1900, he decided to build a dam down here and let the stream that used to come down and go across into the river, let that stream fill the meadow. And Gordon may tell us a little bit about Cold Brook and all that stuff. I'll hurry it along. Anyway, old Ed Farrar, who wasn't old then in 1900, vigorous young man, I have pictures of him, good-looking guy. He built a dam down here with a spillway at the other end, and he built a series of boards so he could adjust the level of the pond by adjusting the boards. And flooded the meadow, made a beautiful pond out of it, and that's over 100 years ago, 111 to be exact. He got the town to lift the level of 117 so that the stream, instead of going across the road, would flood the meadow and jump out here. And many people have enjoyed it. Let me fast forward then. That's 1900. I'm going to fast forward to 1925, where a person who remembers those days will talk to us.
1925, I was 6 years old, and my family moved here from Belmont, and Dad negotiated with Ed Farrar to buy a building lot at the end of the pond, but he wouldn't sell a building lot. He said, I want to sell this whole section all south of Cold Brook, almost 100 acres. Dad was able to come up with the money, which was not that much in those days.
20 bucks an acre and he won't take a penny less. Or was it 200?
Yeah. And so we, Dad contracted with R.D. Donaldson Sr., lived up in the center of town, to build a big house in the end of the pond, up on the hill, looking up toward the west to view the pond. And so our family moved in. There, 3 boys and a girl, and it was a wonderful place to grow up. We had a farm. My mother's background was in Pottstown, Pennsylvania, farming. So we had a big farm and cows and cats and pigs and orchard. And so we grew up in that kind of situation. But we spent a lot of time on the pond. We had canoes, rowboat, and walked around the pond. And one of the sites we liked to picnic on was right here, because it was the only deep sandy beach for swimming. So we would canoe up and have a picnic and enjoy this particular area. At that time, the dam breast was much lower than this. It was only a few feet above the water level. And the dam itself was made of wooden planks. It ran through a sluice way and then down over 2 3-foot drops stepwise, and then flowed into the river. So at that time, when the water got high, our family had to come up and bring sandbags to keep the water from flowing over the top. And it was something we had to keep track of regularly. Over the years, there were minor changes made to protect it until in '89, Lycott Associates built a larger dam, up the bigger dam breast that you see here now, and the sluice way, and making it much safer protection as far as flowing over.
Didn't it wash out once, Dad?
It did, and I don't remember the details. It washed somewhat, but not in a major way, but enough that it had to be refilled. So the wood, there's a large cave on the hillside over there where sand was hauled in, and it's a source for filling in on here. Well, I brought along a couple of books here. One because it has a marvelous picture of Ed Farrar, tall, slender, standing, and his house, which was right at the end of our current driveway on 126, big elm tree in front. And I just pass that around, people take a look and get a feeling for that. So that's what that house looked like when we came to Lincoln, and it remained that way through until he died. Ed Farrar died around 1949, 50, and he was 86. And the house was in his land at that point was bought by a relative of his, Mrs. Howard, and subdivided and sold. Tony Pickman bought his lot, which is down on the point, on the north side of the pond, and built his house there. And Tony is still living a little infirm now, but well in his 90s. And he was our president of the Farrar Pond Associates. The Farrar Pond Associates was formed in 1963 of the homeowners who lived on the south side, and those of us who are on the north side of Pole Brook, in order to manage the pond. And it later, shall we say, that was 63, that was the homeowner was formed. And then later, as the needs arose, it eventually became made into a more formal organization when we had land. What had happened, I'll go back to the Winchell land. After my mother died in 60, our family moved in with Dad, and we lived there, and then we eventually bought the house and the land, which was the whole hillside on the south side of the pond, south of Pole Brook, was then left to the four children. It was decided that we did not want this to have it built up in this big lots and houses and so on, and we went to the town to see how we could preserve the land. And as a result, the new zoning was acquired, which allowed us to avoid the 2-acre subdivisions and make make a cluster zoning, which was where the Lincoln Ridge and Farrar Village had their origin. And over a period of 10 years, first the Farrar Village was formed, and was fairly successful. There was a recession and economically, and there was a little problem, but it did get built. And then in '78, we had the remaining 90 acres the family wanted to sell, but it had to be rezoned again to this same kind of zoning, and there was a lot of resistance. Both the Farrar Village people resented the objection because it would lower the land values, and neighborhood people didn't want that much traffic down. But after several years of negotiation, why it was decided this was the right way to go, and Lincoln Ridge was officially allowed. At the same time, the Farrar Pond Associates voted to take over the responsibility for the dam. Until then, it was the Winchell's responsibility, and so that since then has now been the responsibility of the Farrar Pond Associates, with representatives from the town, from each of the condo groups. So now we're standing on much more better constructed dam. Not doesn't flow over when the water gets high. But I have some memories of back when it was a board. They were 12 by 10 by 2 boards, making a spillway and then making 2 shops of about 3 feet with water flowing over into another area and down below a pond, which was usually filled with sunfish and all. And we as kids used to fish with them with our hands in that little pond down below. But the water then flows over into the river. So it was a great place for us to grow up, and with our family came along, and I remember Enid reminded me of a scary event when Skip was 2 years old. We were swimming here, and the water was running over fairly fast like that, and she was holding Skip by one hand, and he was 2 years old or so, and it slipped out of his hand, went sailing down the sluiceway.
Oh my gosh.
Fortunately, I was standing at the top of the first pocket and grabbed him as he went by.
They wanted to do it again, huh? Great.
So it worked out all right.
Yeah.
History repeats itself. I remember one year we had a hurricane where there was high water and flowing, and I was older and did the same thing. Well, it was Aunt Doc who happened to be down here and fished me out as I was drifting off into the river.
Oh, really? So you went over the whole
So
way.
I was down there too.
A family tradition.
All right, why don't I talk about the mechanics here then?
Yeah, okay, right. I think you can take over now.
Here she is. Yeah, go ahead.
So the White House in that book, the old farmhouse in the book,
Yeah.
is that still there?
No, I was on 126
Yeah.
next to Pickman's driveway, and when did Farrar's house burn down?
In the
Well,
70s.
it was about, he died at 49,
Yeah.
in 49, and I think it was about 10 years later that
Oh, I'm
So
sure.
50s it
it
burned
was in
down.
that 10-year period
Okay.
that she took it down
Yeah.
was not
in order to subdivide the
Goes on the
land.
page opposite the picture.
I have another question related to that. The photo in the book, the farmhouse, looks the front of it looks very much like the farmhouse that's about halfway down Farrar Road as you're headed out to 126 on the right.
it does.
And I've always heard that house was protected for historical reasons. Is there any relationship to those two houses?
Oh, with the
I
bears?
don't believe so. You're talking the Sherman Farm, I think, which is
Sherman.
the
I don't know what the name
denial.
is. But it looks a lot like the front
That's
of that.
right. Well, that
I
was
thought maybe it had
that's
been
that
moved.
age. No, that was that age of
Okay.
construction.
Okay.
That house
Yeah.
was built
That's
and
gone. This is
rebuilt
gone.
and
This one's
rebuilt.
gone.
It's gone.
Okay.
But I mean,
Yeah,
it
that's
dated
what the
back to
Farrar
the
house looked like when we
1600s.
came.
Now, here comes Jeannie. Hi, Jeannie.
Hi. You want to introduce yourself and where you live?
Are we doing that?
Yes, we
missed
already
that part of
have.
it, but we'll catch you on the rebound.
Oh, so I'm Jeannie Welch, and I live at 23 Birchwood, and I had the poorly behaved dog that I just had to take home.
I had a poorly behaved dog. I had to bring him home.
All right, let me finish it off just with some words about the mechanics here. The beavers showed up about a dozen years ago. We had no beavers for all the history of the pond, even though one of the feeder streams is called Beaver Brook. Nevertheless, no beavers, but they showed up when the state outlawed the use of certain traps for beaver trapping. They were outlawed, and the beaver population boomed and came upriver and settled in here. It's got to be 10, 12 years ago, and we coexisted. In fact, when the beavers first appeared, you couldn't see them, but in the morning you'd hear a strange slap, whap. So Gordon Winchell, desiring to get a feeling for this, took his sleeping bag and slept right here all night long so he could be at one with nature, which he was. And we got along all right for a while. And then they started damming things up here. And the water level got up. And the guy, Rick Lee, around the corner there with the low house began to call up. What the hell are you guys doing? My driveway is flooded. My God, do something about it. So we cleared the blockage, but you clear it in the morning, it's back there the next morning. So we employed a young man who runs a firm called Beaver Solutions. No, for every problem there's an opportunity. So he said, "You want me to come and get rid of them?" And we said, "Oh, this is Lincoln. You
Don't get rid of the
you
beavers.
don't do that." He said, "All right, then we'll practice coexistence." So he put in these black pipes, which are called beaver deceivers, or pond levelers. That's right. Because the pipes go into submerged cages out away, very similar to this cage. And the idea is the water can enter the other end of the pipe softly and smoothly, because the beavers are motivated by the sound of rushing water and the feel of rushing water. And their instincts tell them, build a dam. So they can't feel the water coming in there. And it goes through these pipes and emerges out there. So they can hear the sound there, but that doesn't seem to bother them. But they are still moved to dam. So what they do is put debris here and dam this up, but the water can still flow.
Oh, I see.
So that's the idea, beaver deceivers.
So they do like to.
They will, it's cleared now, but if you look at that pile of stuff over there,
Right.
and that pile of stuff over there,
That's them?
that's what, well, Paul Kaplan every morning gets his boots and drags his stuff out. Every
He's a
once in a
nice
while,
guy.
when I feel up to it, I'll go down there and drag the stuff out. So that's why we keep it fairly clean. See that log? That wasn't there. Beavers have brought that
Just
log
brought
in.
that.
And as you go through the woods, when they're active, you'll see how they have
Oh,
cut trees down. It looks like a pencil sharp.
Yeah, it really does. It's terrible.
And they are powerful. They are big guys.
How many are here? How many?
I have no idea. We originally had the two, and their old house is still visible up around the corner. Those two have two babies who stay with them for another year. This couple has two more, so now you got six. But now the next year you got two more coming along, so they kick out the oldest two who go upstream. So the population does its best to grow. And now there's quite a colony up at the other end, up at the Winchell end, with a lodge on Pickman Point, Pickman Cove, whatever you call that.
Are there predators?
Not for beavers. There used to be, but the timber wolves have kind of died out. And so the
they
predator
have a-
was the human.
They have a heyday.
Yeah. So they're not too many. I mean, they get sick and die
Yeah.
and all that. So I don't know.
We need beaver birth
Now, we
control.
live very happily with them down there.
Yeah.
They don't do anything. They keep our view clear.
Open.
So we can look at the lake.
Thoughtful. Yeah.
And they've made three ponds
Right.
below our house, and they don't. We're on a hill, so they don't flood our basements.
But they have created new wetlands just below him, and his two sons, Fred and Will, have built a boardwalk so
Yeah.
the old trail, which used to be dry, now is underwater.
That's where the old trail was. That
That's
boardwalk.
right,
Yeah.
right across
I
it.
like
And
that
it wasn't
It's
any
beautiful
water
there.
2
there.
or 3 years, we got to raise it 4 to 6 inches.
I like that boardwalk.
They
It's
just got
beautiful.
through raising it again this past
beautiful.
season. And that's at the very east end of
Yeah.
the pond. Now there's a trail that runs all along this side of the pond. Big canoe dock over below Farrar Village. And then you get to the very end and there's a trail across below his house going over to his house. And one thing you might someday prevail yourself, if he allows it, is if you walk up beside his house and his son's house, the feeder stream, Pole Brook, which comes under Route 126, tumbles down a lovely waterfall. So come good weather, you'll see that beautiful waterfall. And trout have been known to be in there. And I remember once Gordon and I went upstream because he was doing some testing and came across a little trace of E. coli.
Oh, all right.
So we walked upstream, up by Diana Obrashkin's and across the street by the gas station, and followed the stream. Finally got over to a house on Hillside Avenue.
I've never been up that far.
Yeah, and one of the houses up there had a septic problem.
So got fixed.
Yeah.
Had a what?
A septic problem.
Oh, yeah, okay.
E. coli and all that. But that was great, walking with this guy, trying to trace the feeder stream behind the police station, and it was great fun.
I'm kind of curious about the swimming, that you used to swim here.
Sure, the sandy beach right here.
Wonderful.
And yet we're not supposed to swim here, so I was curious about that.
Only if you're a
The concern is it's a closed body of water without much coming in and going out, and it's not a very deep pond. So if it started getting used for public bathing, it very quickly had bacterial
I see.
problems.
Okay. I was
Oh,
curious about that.
I have a question, Will.
All right, let me get, okay, question here. I told you about the beaver deceivers. Well, another reason for the construction of this new dam and spillway was to allow us to draw the pond down,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that's one technique to help combat invasive species. So we constructed this device here underneath the snag. And this has a big culvert. There's a piece of it left over there, which runs under the dam and emerges in that cage out there. And that covers the big culvert. And we have a valve. Down here is a large valve, and we used to do it once a year. Every winter we would come, open the valve, taking 100 streams and not to allow the water to go out here into the river. It wrecked the skating. The pond looked like hell. Old stumps emerged that Farrar had cut, and it smelled. So there was a lot of upset people about this drawdown, but we still wanted to do it to combat the invasive species. So we compromised, and we now only do it 1 year out of every 3. Last winter we did it. So 1 year out of 3, we try to drop the pond level about 4 feet.
Now, does it work?
Not very well.
I was curious about
Not very well.
And what are the invasive species that you're trying to combat?
Milfoil, kabamba, fanwort, water chestnut,
All kinds.
Potamogeton crispus, and stuff like that. So we employ a firm, Lycott Environmental, and they inspect every year. And occasionally we do a chemical treatment. Now this chemical treatment has been well researched so that it's targeted to only certain species. Doesn't hurt the wildlife, doesn't hurt the pond lilies, but it is targeted. It's milfoil, we do the milfoil treatment. And that's been successful for 10, 15 years now. The only problem is it costs an arm and a leg. So that's the downside of that. But we've managed by collecting from the neighborhoods to keep up with it. And that has preserved the pond. It's only 4 to 6 feet deep. So the sun reaches the bottom. If we don't keep up with it, we'll lose the pond. Will remembers when it was so thick out there that you couldn't even get a canoe across it.
Wow.
So, but we've managed to do it, and with
Say
good
how
fortune.
quickly it grows, because I think that's one of the most awesome
Yeah.
things that I heard recently.
Yeah, the fanwort, which is one of the ones
Yeah.
that comes in here, which we treated last year, according to the Pond Association, can grow 2 to 3 feet a day.
From the top down or the down up?
Well, most things grow from the different
Harold, excuse me.
Harold?
Harold, when,
Question by,
I couldn't see.
make a new plant.
So it does go
I was
up.
gonna ask, when did you build your house and move in here?
Roots
What
to the
year?
bottom and goes out.
well, I bought your brother's condo in 1980.
80,
And then we built that place and moved into it in 83.
in
Tom's
83.
got a question.
I'd like to speak a word for the beauty of the trail along the pond.
Okay.
And thanks to the Winchells, it's extraordinary because I know this summer it's been widened. And we can use the roadway, all right, for striding, okay? And my physical therapist says, Tom, you have to walk every day. So the road for striding, but the pond for, well, adventure, discovery, contemplation, and one example of that, October 3rd this year, dark day, gray like this, and I walked from the house, 66 Birchwood, down into the little hollow, and then going up toward the pond, and everything was dark. And suddenly, as I got up on the ridge, this gorgeous sunshine on the far bank reflected on the pond, and that lifted the day for me. And to the attentive, this is Mr. Emerson, to the attentive eye, each moment of the year has its own beauty. And in the same field, it beholds every hour a picture which was never seen before and which shall never be seen again. That's for us. That's for us.
Beautiful. Thank you, Tom.
So,
And on a poetic note.
Harold. Why don't, question?
Yeah. We all get a solicitation from the Audubon for our...
Today it showed up.
Yeah, well, yesterday.
Yesterday.
Yesterday. All right. So, but there are other trusts which get involved. One is this one we're talking about today. Why is there no solicitation for all the trusts? Why?
Well, the trusts don't have money. Audubon holds the money on behalf of the neighborhood association.
it is the financial agent, so we do not have to apply for tax-exempt status. They do it.
So Audubon does it for the trusts, and that thereby allows people to take a deduction.
So what you're saying is that the solicitation, which we all got, covers all the trusts.
Correct.
Yes, then why don't we say it in the solicitation?
Well, because the purpose is to maintain the pond.
Right, but why? But it's on behalf of the trust.
It's on behalf of the citizens of Lincoln. I mean, the trusts have their own land.
Right.
One trust owns the water.
Right.
Only the one trust, and that's the Farrar Pond Conservation Trust, and they and the Farrar Pond Associates have a common board. Same guys. So it's really pond related as opposed to the trails in the woods. The trails in the woods are maintained by what's the name
Lincoln
of it? The
Land.
Lincoln Land Conservation Trust.
I.e. Buzz.
Yes.
Okay.
If you hear a buzz in the woods, it's Buzz.
You said it, boy. If you hear a
But also
chainsaw,
it's
it
worth
better be
mentioning that
Buzz.
Will does some work, Harold does some work. Where's Shirley? Shirley back here walks these trails every day and is often the first to spot the trees and branches that are down and report it. So where's Gordon did it in the old days. I mean, it's a kind of cooperative effort, and a lot of these people are unsung heroes, and the rest of us benefit from the trails that are well maintained when we go walking. We take that for granted, and these people are doing it for free.
As you know, we tour guides receive no compensation.
No, Harold, you cannot do that.
Okay.
Just tips.
Solicited also?
Yeah. Both associations contribute as associations. We also solicit anybody who feels like it. A lot of people in Wayland walk the trails. So if I can get their name and address, and they're quite willing to help out. Anybody who knows and loves the pond. It's a question of finding out who they are, so they get the letter, that's all.
Harold, I
And
just
you write it
want
out.
to clarify
Yeah, the
something,
important
and I
thing,
think you can
one of my
help me
great
with
contributions as
this. So
president
you got a
was-
solicitation from Mass Audubon, which is money that goes to help the pond.
do we get any other solicitations that we should be aware of?
No, that's the
So
only
if you
one.
want to help the pond, it's the one you got in the mail yesterday or today, the Mass, or you get today, the Mass
See,
Audubon.
Audubon owns property on the other side of the
Right.
pond. They have a large lot, and their contribution to the pond is to manage our money for us and to run the solicitation.
It's also
It
worth,
is. It is.
worth mentioning that, especially when the annual meeting comes up, there, when you see the budget for Lincoln Ridge, there's a very small line item that, or maybe it's under miscellaneous, I don't remember anymore. Lincoln Ridge makes a contribution
That's right.
to the pond, but frankly, it's a very small contribution. It's really not very
Yeah,
large.
but it is,
So-
see, the association owns Lincoln Ridge land, and the association is the abutter. The residents own only their condo from the paint back or whatever it is. Yeah.
Until we split.
Right. All right, let's have a round of applause for the organizer.
Let's have a round of applause for the content.
Yeah.
That's why we're all here. Thank you.
Bee, do you need help carrying